What's up, guys? I'm back with more F123 My Team, and we have Jeddah this week. Just a real quick note, I'm showing you what's happening here at the beginning. First of all, so I can show you the vehicle performance comparison, which shows that we are the second best car, but also to show you that I have used one of my control electronics for the year, and we only have two. So I've used up the first one fully because if you didn't see the last video, I had a mechanical failure on track during the race at Bahrain. So go watch that video if you haven't, although I just spoiled the result. But the outcome was that one of the control electronics of the two that we get for the year is now useless. So at some point, we will be taking an engine penalty, some sort of grid penalty for new control electronics, because there's no way that this one that I'm putting in now will last for the rest of the season. That's just the way it is, but it's a long season, something 23 races or something like that. So we've got time to hopefully make up that result or that impact that we'll have to the starting position from the grid penalty and see what we can do. But anyway, this is Jeddah, as I mentioned, and this is a track that I really enjoy personally. I really have a good time here. I think I've just run a lot of laps here for whatever reason, and the result is that I just feel really good on the track and feel really confident, especially when I've been putting in some laps and practicing a little bit. And you see me get better throughout this race, which I think tends to happen when I'm doing a 100% race because you're just liable to when you're doing 50 plus laps at a track as you are here. So I do get better. I think I improve a little bit throughout qualifying. I definitely felt myself improving in practice when I was practicing, and I think that you'll see me improve throughout the race too. But I'm already starting from a point with this track that I feel pretty good at. And also, I mean, you can sort of see that in the AI rating or level. I think we have it at 83 for this race, if I'm not mistaken, which probably doesn't sound that high to a lot of you, but for me, that's a pretty high number. And since I've gone no assists, I have historically been somewhere in the 60 to 70 range. This is a track where I felt comfortable on 83, and I think I'm competitive on 83. So that should tell you a little bit about how I feel about the track. But our first qualifying lap was not that great. It was okay, but not that great. It's not what you would expect from the second best car in the grid, as I have, and a track that I feel pretty comfortable at. But the good news is that we're rapidly improving here on the second lap. Probably was a track limits violation, but I have it on regular in my team because the AI cannot get track limits violations, so it seems stupid to me that I would impose that penalty or that possibility upon myself when the AI can't deal with it. I think that you're handicapped against the AI already in a lot of different ways, just based on the way that the AI races. So to me, it doesn't seem worth it to handicap myself even further by putting it to strict track limits when the AI is guaranteed to not ever get any track limits violations. As far as I'm aware, I mean, please correct me if I'm wrong there. Speak up if you've seen otherwise, but never in my multiple years of racing in my team have I seen the AI actually even get a single warning, as far as I know, much less a 3 second penalty for track limits violations. I don't think they can speed in the pit lane, do track limits violations. I mean, I think they get collision penalties if they, for some reason, find themselves in a position where they're contacting another car. But in terms of the other stuff, I really don't think they can do it. So that's a bit of a tangent there. Just something that I've thought about my team. As we finish up our second lap and go to P9, so there's no question to me that that's just not good enough. We are going to have to put in a banger of a lap here to hopefully get P1. And I'm a little off through the beginning there, but I'm confident that I'll be able to pick up time later in the lap because there were multiple places throughout the lap where I just felt like I was a little off, and I know that that time can be made up. For instance, I've already made up the time that I lost in the first turn by a couple turns later, and I think I'm only going to get better throughout the lap just because of track evolution. I'm the last car on track, as you can see. I think the AI all started a little earlier than I probably would have if I were then, but I started at what I think is a pretty optimal time. I just got the qualifying complete message, and I'm halfway through my lap, or almost halfway through my lap, so I think that's pretty good. You see me just getting a lot more confident on some of these turns where you've really got to live close to the wall, and I just felt like as we went through qualifying, I was sort of getting to the point where I was just feeling better and better about the track and about the turns. I think I handled this one pretty well. Yeah, that's pretty good, I would think. kept a lot of speed up there, saved a lot of time. So I'm 8 tenths up, almost 9 tenths up, and we're halfway through Sector 3. So I'm feeling pretty good about this. I'm not sure exactly what kind of laps the people in front of me did, but I think as long as I continue to pipe in a pretty good lap here, we should be fine. And I'm now 1.1 seconds over what I did last lap. So I don't think there's any question this is going to be a good lap. And it is P1. That is a pole. And this is a race where I feel like it was just deserved. I feel like it's a track where, again, I feel pretty confident. So the P1 made a lot of sense to me. Jamie's down in P10. We would love to see her higher, but it is what it is. So we will be starting at the front of the grid. Charles and Carlos are close behind, but hopefully we will fend them off for the race, which is coming up next.
Good morning, good afternoon, or for us, good evening, as we're under the night lights of Jeddah. The floodlights are on and so is the pressure here at the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. So let's take a look at the topographical map of the Jeddah street circuit. As you can see, a number of challenging corners for the drivers to master here. We'll see just how much the teams have benefited from their time spent in practice this weekend. And like many street circuits, this track has the potential to punish drivers that get it wrong. Let's hope we avoid any safety cars today. Before we begin, let's take a quick look at the grid lineup for today's race. Joker lines up on pole position. And it's Charles Leclerc in P2. Moving on to the rest of the grid, we have Sainz, Verstappen, Hamilton, Norris, Perez, Russell, Oscar Piastri, Chadwick, Gasly, Ocon, Bottas, Stroll, Hulkenberg, Ricciardo, Magnussen, Joe, Albon, Tsunoda, Fernando Alonso, and Logan Sargent. It's almost time for those 5 red lights to go out then. Let's see who can prevail today. Anthony Davidson joins me once again in the commentary box. Ant, it's fantastic to have you with us here, but I'm curious, as a man with experience out on the track, how do you stop those pre-race nerves from becoming overwhelming when you're lining up on the grid?
Well, I imagine they'll be starting to feel the adrenaline as they anticipate the run down into turn 1, a bit like preparing to go into battle. The unknown situation will bring nerves, but that's a good thing. It will keep them focused on the moment and on their surroundings as we build towards the start of the Grand Prix.
So there's the race intro. We are starting P1. A lot of quality drivers behind me. Let's go into the race strategy here. It's looking like it's going to be a 2-stop, medium, medium, soft. And my personalized strategy goes 15 laps, 15 laps, 20 laps. So medium, medium, soft, 15, 15, 20. I think we're going to be hard-pressed to do 20 laps on the softs, but we'll just see how the race pans out and see what kind of opportunities we have in front of us, because there's always the possibility of a red flag, as we had in Bahrain. There's always the possibility of a safety car. There's always the possibility of just being in a position on track. For instance, if I'm behind some traffic or have a good gap to the car behind me or whatever, where basically I could have an opportunity to go with the different strategy. But I think it looked like all the cars were on pretty much mediums and softs, if I saw that correctly. It's possible I didn't see that correctly, but that's what it looked like to me. So I would expect that pretty much every car on the grid is going to go some variation of that 2-stop. Maybe throw hard in there, as you saw in the suggested strategies. But personally, I'm going to try my best to stay off the hard if at all possible. I took the approach during qualifying of doing using only 2 sets of my tires so that I would have a new set of softs for the race. I think that's how that works. It's how it's supposed to work. I don't know if it's how it works in game, but my understanding is that's how it works. So that's what I'm going for. I want to save some softs, some brand new softs. And I was wrong, by the way. Science is on the hards, and it's safe to say that some other drivers are as well. But their lights are out. Away we go. Leclerc gets a pretty good start there. I was very, very conservative, just trying not to run into Charles Leclerc and trying not to ruin my race on lap 1. I am already over a second behind Leclerc, and I think that was partially just the fact of I was being a little bit more careful. I think he is apparently just very rapid. I mean, look at this. He's over 1.2 seconds ahead already. I don't know if he's using his battery a bunch or what. I'm not really using mine, especially through all those winding turns. I just sort of laying off it a bit, but I do get a sense just and I have the benefit of having seen the whole race already, but I did get the sense that I was running maybe higher downforce than some of the other cars. I think for me, I run a little bit higher downforce than I think the meta would be on this track, if I'm not mistaken. Just because it makes me feel a little bit more comfortable, and I really feel like I'm tuned into the car, and I'm just able to really hit those apexes as I should and almost scrape the wall. That was a dangerous little game right there. Verstappen, I'm glad he backed out. I was kind of a little bit worried that he was just going to go neck and neck with me into that next little stretch there, and I probably would have had to go off track to avoid him, but fortunately we both avoid contact. The downside is we're both over 2 seconds behind Charles Leclerc now, so this could be a very long race. I hope it's not, but it could be a very long race. Fast forward a bit to lap 2. Going into lap 3, Leclerc is 2.6 seconds ahead of us. Verstappen is a bit ahead of me. Fortunately, I was able to catch him. I was right on his tail throughout that whole lap, and that's kind of when I started to get the sense that I was running a little bit higher downforce, because when it came to the straights, he seemed to be faster than me. When it came to anything that wasn't a straight, it seemed like I was faster than him. So, and that's something that I've found before running the AI, but also running against real drivers at Jeddah, is I just feel comfortable with a little bit higher downforce. And the result is that I gain a lot of time in the curvy sections and lose at least some time in the long straights. And maybe that's bad, but I do feel like I get pretty good results here. And I think that's because of my comfort with the track. But Verstappen is back ahead. And look, it is what it is, but the fact of the matter is we're both going to be losing a ton of time if we keep battling like this. So I'm anxious to get out in front of this guy and leave him in the dust. I go a little bit deep there, get the warning for corner cutting, and I keep the place. I'm going to be honest, I I probably would have given the place back in a league race against real people. I was thinking about it with Verstappen. I don't know. It felt like what I did might not have been that bad. I mean, it kind of felt like I was going to get the move done regardless, but just braked a little late. So, I don't know. Crucify me in the comments if you want. Tell me if I'm a dirty, nasty cheater, but I do feel a little bit okay about that, and I do think, honestly, that I would have gotten out in front of Verstappen anyway, even without that. But like I said, let me know in the comments what you think about that. 5-second penalty, 30-second penalty. What is it? What do I need to self-impose to myself to make it right for Max? Fortunately, we have caught up to Charles at this point. I've got the fast lap at this point. We've left Verstappen in the dust a little bit. It kind of felt to me like once I got past him, he might have used quite a bit of battery to stay out where we were. And you saw me get stuck on that curb. That happens a few times throughout this race. It's slightly raised, and you just get planted on it. If you get your left tire on the left side of that and your right tire on the right side of that, you cannot get off. You basically have to ride it to the end of the bumper, take your medicine, go off track, and sacrifice a little bit of time, as you saw with Leclerc. And I'm confident that I did that at least one or two more times during this race, which I'm sure you'll see some of that. But we are catching up with Leclerc, and he's got a lot of pace. We saw this in Bahrain, where he ran off to a huge lead and ended up getting himself in trouble, causing a red flag by spinning around. I don't think he does that in this race, but it has seemed like he's been faster than me for most of this race, and we are catching him a bit here, but maybe that was a little bit of comfort. Maybe that was him managing his tires. Maybe that was him backing off a little bit on battery usage. I don't know, but we are both, I would say, collectively well ahead of the rest of the grid here. Verstappen, 3.8 seconds back. Hamilton, 5.5. Perez, almost 10 seconds back. So it is looking like it's going to be a two-car race for the win here today. I go into that curb a little bit, just mismanage it a bit, but fortunately I'm able to stay in front of Charles, get past him, and it's a bit of being off to the races at this point, I think, because something that I have found about the AI, and this seems to be consistent every year, is that they use a lot of battery to defend, and then once you get past, it feels like they almost just give up on it a little bit. And I felt like that happened maybe a little bit here, although you see him sticking with me, but I felt like it happened a bit with Verstappen when we passed him a couple laps ago. So I think a lot of times I will really push to use my battery. You see me there, get stuck on the exact same curb again, take my medicine, get back on track. I try to do as safe of an entry as possible, but Leclerc obviously gets by me, and Verstappen is rapidly catching up as well. So Verstappen is looking like he's going to be pretty close to DRS if I fight with Charles at all. And not saying that I necessarily will, but it seems like a possibility. I get past him there pretty quickly. Verstappen is now a second and a half behind. But fast forward a bit, and I'm pitting here. I'm finishing my first stint. So I stuck with the 15 laps for the mediums on my first stint. It remains to be seen what I'm going to do in this second stint here. But we come out of the pits. I'm in P7. Looks like I'm going to have a pretty decent lead over Hulkenberg. Pretty decent lead over Albon. Gasly and Piastri are going to be the next cars up the road. These guys, I assume, started on the mediums as well. So I should be much faster than these cars, just given I had these brand new tires. Theirs are 15, 16 laps old. You saw Hamilton pit there. I don't know if he's going to be much of a competition. I mean, obviously he's 8 seconds behind me at this point. We've got a lot of race left to go. But he was very quick in Bahrain, so we'll see what happens there. I was able to catch Gasly very quickly, just given, again, the tire offset that I talked about. But Gasly and Piastri are both within half a second or so in front of me, and I'm conscious of the fact that I need to get past these cars pretty quickly, because if I pitted early enough that I should be getting the benefit of the undercut on Leclerc and Verstappen, but if I waste a bunch of time fighting with these cars, I'm going to be back to where I was at another point in the race, behind cars that I don't want to be behind. I almost completely wasted everything there. I did let them back pass, and I could have wasted a lot more time behind them if they hadn't both immediately pitted, which fortunately they did. I get the fast lap, all purple, 133, 110, and now Perez is the only car in front of me. And remember, he hasn't pitted yet, so with a 9-second lead, you assume that is going to drop into nothing pretty quickly with me catching him, and then obviously once he pits, I'll be well ahead. But Verstappen and Leclerc are a couple seconds behind me here, so it seems like the undercut was successful, even if I was afraid that getting held up by Gasly and Piastri would cause a problem. Fortunately, it does not. Perez ultimately pits, and by lap 24, Leclerc and Verstappen are somehow back within range of me. I don't know if I was lulled into just a false sense of like, oh, I don't need to worry about anything or what, but it felt to me like they got pretty rapid. Although the downside that you start to see with both of them here is that they're fighting. So they go from roughly a second back to almost 2 seconds back, and you can see their positions change back and forth throughout this second stint. And throughout all this, I'm just building up a lead on both of them because, again, they're fighting. They're probably going side by side in the corners, sacrificing a lot of time. I'm getting comfortable with the track. I'm pumping in pretty quick laps, I would say. I don't know that I ended up getting a new purple. This might be the same old purple, but I'm definitely building a lead on these guys. So I took advantage of their fighting. Hamilton and Perez, I don't know if they're doing the same thing, but they're roughly in step with each other, so maybe they're sticking around. But you see Hamilton go to the softs, so we're at the pitting stage, and I think that my engineer has told me at this point to pit, but pretty much what I decided is I'm going to wait, and I'm just going to cover off whatever Leclerc or Verstappen does. And you see Leclerc pit there, so he's going mediums. Presumably he will go to the softs, and he does. And I tell my engineer I'm coming in this lap. We're going to take the new softs, and I will take those at the end of the race. And they should be pretty fast, 15 laps or so. You would assume that they're going to hold up fine, and I'll be fine. That's the hope, at least. And as long as nothing crazy happens, I would hope that I can work my way to the lead and to the win. Again, Perez is not going to be a problem. He still needs to pit. Verstappen has to pit again as well, and he's only 15 seconds ahead of me. So by the time he pits, I should definitely be out in front of him, and I should have quite a lead, as you see me have on Leclerc. So it's looking like at this point, I just need to stay smart and drive my way to the win, which would be, of course, my first win in Formula One after retiring at Bahrain. I would have a win in my second race ever, which would be great. Obviously not my second race ever in any game, but in this career, in this game, this would be my second race. So I'm hoping that I can just keep it clean, keep it smart, not do anything stupid. And I do kind of feel that with Perez. I mean, it kind of felt like I could have really gotten closer to him at a couple of these spots, and it just felt like the smart thing to do was just kind of stay behind him here. I am going to try to use as much battery as I can to hopefully get out in front of him as quickly as I can, though, because the last thing I want is to be stuck behind him and open the door for Verstappen to have a fast pit stop, get on the softs, and somehow be in a better position than me going into the race. But fortunately for me, Verstappen goes onto the hard tires, and he's also still pitting. So there is nothing at all to worry about now from Verstappen on the hards. The only possible situation where that would matter is if, for some reason, these softs just die quicker than I'm expecting them to. And I fully expect them to make it to the end of the race, which is going to be ultimately about 15 laps on these tires, which should be completely fine just based on what I saw with wear when I was kind of practicing and the medium wear that we got from the first two stints. It's seeming like that's going to be completely fine. And at this point, I'm zooming. You see me with the purple first sector. And full disclosure, I was definitely going for a fast lap here. The tires were relatively new. I set a purple third sector when I was chasing Perez. And I thought, okay, this is going to be the time. These things are just, I feel like I am just cutting into the track with these tires. So I felt like now was the time to do it. Now was the time to get the fast lap, get the extra point, and hope that no drivers take it from me later in the race, which shouldn't be a problem as long as I put the speed into this lap that I know I can do. And then, of course, the added benefit is that I'm going to build even more of a lead to some of these guys behind me. So it's looking like that's going to be not a problem at all. Purple first two sectors. I am roughly a second and a half up on my fast lap, which was a 1:32.53. And it's only getting higher. So you see me go across the line with the 1:39.30, which is good enough for the fast lap at the moment. And fast forward a bit, I build up even more of a lead. I was just feeling great at this point in the race. I was just hammering in great laps. I felt comfortable, and even as the tires started to drop off, I still felt really, really good. If I remember correctly, I think I'm going to show you here the tire wear at some point in this lap. And they ended up being completely fine. I kind of wanted to minimize that last stint, and that was part of the idea behind waiting to just cover a Leclerc pit stop, is that I wanted to protect these soft tires for the final stint. That was a bit of a scary moment, by the way. I wish he had just moved quicker, but it ended up okay. I got past him. But I was kind of hoping to just hold off on using the softs until as late as I could to preserve them until the end of the race. I didn't want to actually do 20 laps on the softs like my engineer suggested at the beginning of the race. I mean, maybe it would have been fine. Maybe it was actually the fastest lap or the fastest race time that I could have done. But to me, it just felt a little bit more prudent to take that second set of mediums as long as I could and wait to switch to the softs until I kind of really needed to. So I waited for Leclerc to pit. I pitted and just ran off with this, honestly. You see tire wear there, 37% at the front right, which is not bad at all. I mean, I was definitely starting to feel it. The laps were not as fast as they were earlier in the stint, but these guys were not catching me. I really feel like I ran away with that race, and I'm not going to say that the AI should have been higher. I mean, I felt like the AI was set to a pretty good level. It just felt to me like I just felt better and better as the race went on. You know, I felt really in tune. I felt like the setup was really good. And I don't always feel like that. There are certain tracks where I never feel like I have a great setup. But today at Jeddah with this setup, I felt on fire. The car felt great. I felt like I was cutting into the track. I felt like I was hitting the apexes an inch and a half away from the wall. I mean, just felt like a really, really good race. I mean, that's one where you finish the race, and a 100% race is always tough, right? I mean, it's always kind of grueling, and I'm sweating by the end of one of these, but this is one where I finished the race and I just felt great. I just thought, yeah, I killed that. That was awesome. And I do think that I did. So you see a little bit of celebration here. Jeff Skywalker, first win in Formula One. Great for the team. Great for the other guys on the podium, I guess, but I would prefer that they got less points so I could make more of a recovery in the Drivers' Championship and the Constructors' Championship after I DNF'd the first race with mechanical failure. But ultimately a really good outcome here, a really good race. I'm going to hope to keep up the same momentum throughout the rest of this season. We'll see how the other cars evolve, and we'll see how I do at other tracks. Obviously, my fast lap here was well faster than anyone else. I'm on a different level in this race. Jamie, unfortunately, P19. I don't know what happened there. I don't know if she maybe had damage or something, but I remember at one race I looked at the track map and thought, "Dang, she's a lot further back than I would have expected," which was unfortunate. But hopefully she can do a bit better throughout the rest of the season and get a bunch of points for the team so that we can really maximize our results for the team. But you see me click in here to my laps. It felt like my stints were really consistent, really good, and largely getting faster, which of course you would expect as some of the fuel burns off and I go on to the faster set of tires. But the times ultimately I think looked pretty consistent too. It was consistent upper 133s, lower 134s, 134s all throughout there. And then once I go into the softs, it's like a 130 and then 32s and 33s. There's the 31, back to the 32s and 33s. So felt good, felt consistent. It was a fun race. This is a track that I love. Unfortunately, it's going to be a full season of my team until we get back there. Maybe we'll have a league race at some point soon there. I'm not super sure, but um, yeah, just really good race, really good outcome, and we are moving our way up. So we'll see what we can do for the rest of the season and see what kind of points we can get. Thanks for watching.